Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this live video podcast. I hope you're all doing great. As with the last couple of podcasts that I've done live like this, I want you guys to come in with questions and I will be answering for you. The questions you can use either Instagram. Actually, Instagram has been the channel that's been working best so far. So latest picture that I put out on Instagram under Mentor Pilot. Just put your questions in under there and I will answer them as they come along, okay? You can also use Twitter. It might take a little bit longer, and I have once again started up my chat function, but I'm not expecting that to work much. For some reason, it might be my computer, it just doesn't seem to work. Now, before I start, I also want to clarify a few things. Now, as always, I will be representing my own views. I'm not representing any company, any entity, or anyone else. It's just me. And I will be giving you the answers to your questions as soon as I can, just taking them straight from my heart. So I'm not looking things up. If you want more in-depth answers to questions, I suggest that you write them into me as a question on my YouTube channel, and I'll have some time to maybe look it up a little bit and so on. But I'll do my best to answer your questions straight away. So fire away. And I will be looking down now and then because I am using my iPhone to see what kind of questions that you're bringing up. So I am furiously looking at my Instagram account at the moment, waiting for you guys to fire away with your questions. Anyway, until I am getting this thing started, the topic of today is going to mainly be CRM. So whatever questions you have regarding CRM in the flight deck, CRM in the crew room, when we're not working, or anything like that, just fire away. But also if you have other general questions about aviation, I'm happy to answer everything. But CRM is the main subject of today. And as it's been for the last couple of times, it does take a couple of minutes for people to start asking their questions on here, and I can see that no one is really being able to enter the chat today either. I will be addressing this with YouTube. Might be something that I'm doing wrong, but I'm not sure. So I'll write something anyway. Cool. So I see there's a couple of viewers that's popping in anyway. That's great. Once again, fire away your questions on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook even, and I'll be answering them. And as you can see, it's really hot here in Spain today. It's over 30 degrees. So I will be sweating a little bit. I'm hoping that won't bother you too much. So I am getting a question here from Antpara92. Is Ryanair getting split scimitar winglets on its NG fleet? I know they're shipped with MAX. Well, generally I'm not answering questions on specific airlines and so on because it's a podcast that's supposed to be general, but I do have a little bit of insight into this. So to my knowledge, we are not in Ryanair. They're not changing the NG fleet into scimitars. However, the new MAX 200s that we will be getting, they will have the scimitars. It might be a case of upgrading later on, but it's such a huge fleet that Ryanair carries at the moment that it is a major upgrade to change everyone onto different winglets. So I will be expecting, unless there is significant gain to make, unless we can save a lot on fuel, then I will be very surprised if Ryanair goes down that way. But once again, I am not speaking on behalf of any specific airline here, because that's not what this channel is about. But I hope that answers a little bit of your question anyway. So guys, more questions for this to work. I have had questions regarding CRM earlier, and I am planning to make more podcasts on CRM, specifically how to deal with maybe with captains that you can't get along with, or if you can't get along with any in the crew or anything like that. So if you have questions regarding this, this would be a good time to start asking them. See, I'll be checking on my Twitter account as well to see if there's anything that's coming in there. I also want to take this time, guys, to thank all of you new joiners to the channel. It's absolutely fabulous to see all of you joining. I hope that you're getting stuff out of this. I hope that you're enjoying the channel so far. And if you think that I should be talking more about anything, any specific subject or anything, just let me know. I will be working on improving the quality of the channel, maybe getting a second camera and getting some nicer intros and things like that coming up in the next couple of months when I have some time. But the summer is a really busy period for us. We're working very hard at the moment. So since this is just a side project that I'm doing, I don't really have the time to do that right now. Right, I actually have a little bit on Twitter coming in as well. So Simon Burnham has been talking a little bit about something that's actually fairly important. And it's laser pointers being pointed at the aircraft, how that affects us, and what I think about it. Well, this has gone from being a small issue a couple of years back. It happened very, very rarely to something that happens fairly often now. It's extremely annoying because people that think that they're just pointing that tiny little laser at an aircraft just to kind of light it up in the sky. What they're actually doing is, laser beam is maybe small when it leaves the pointer, but it becomes fairly large when it hits the aircraft window. And the aircraft window kind of spreads it out. So what we experience in the flight deck is a fairly bright, very, very bright light that goes straight into the eyes, and it actually blinds you for a couple of seconds. If you get it straight into the eye, it can damage the retina as well. And definitely it's annoying. And generally this tends to happen when we are at fairly low altitude, which means that we're either just taken off or that we're descending into land, which is a very, very bad time to be blinded when you're flying an aircraft. So if you've ever heard of anyone doing this, please tell them to stop. It is a criminal offense as per the last couple of years to do so. And if the pilot, we can see fairly clearly where these laser pointers are pointed from. So we are always reporting this to our traffic control, which is subsequently reporting it to the police, and the police is then going to try to look them out. And the thing with these guys is that they tend to continue to do this at several aircraft. So the police hopefully finds them until before they manage to do some real damage. But it's annoying, and I really hope it stops. So let's see what else has been coming in. There's more coming in on Twitter. All right, guys. Once again, for those of you that's just joining the live feed, the safest way of getting your questions in is to go in via Instagram and go to my latest picture. There's a picture of a wing and a winglet, and just post your questions on there. Or actually, you can post it on whatever picture that you want, because I can see that immediately coming up in my flow. So I'll see the question and I'll be able to answer it. So do that. Let's see, there is a new question coming in right now. So Pepik has asked, is CRM something that is hard to learn for some people and easy for others, or should it be natural and quite simple for everybody involved? Just thinking about my future training in CRM, since I don't know much about it yet, and I'm currently training towards my CPL with ATPL. Just past the theories. Well, congratulations, Pepik. That's great to hear. Well, Okay, so there are two different things here when it comes to CRM. It's a theoretical CRM part, which is the training that you have to go through, both when you do your ATPL exams and when you do your training in specific airlines. Now, the CRM training that you will have to go through is generally quite dry. It's very theoretical. It will be talking about things like communication, situational awareness, teamwork, things like that, but in very theoretical parts. And it will be structured like how you're supposed to think about these subjects and how you're supposed to attack problem areas within these specific CRM areas, okay? So that's the theory behind it. The theory is something that takes a little bit of time to learn because it's, in my opinion, a quite advanced English language involved in it. It takes a while to get your head around all the different phrases and stuff and to memorize what each and every subject within CRM contains. So to answer the first part of your question, it does take quite a bit of effort during your ATPL part to pass the CRM bits, and subsequently when you get into the airline, when you do your recurrent training, is also going to involve a little bit of work on your part to just really understand the theory behind it. Now, the second part, which is what I really want to talk about, is CRM in the cockpit, as in what crew resource management actually is, how it works between pilots, cabin crew, pilots and ground crew, how we deal with that. And that is something that generally you either have naturally, as in you all come across the guys that kind of can deal with anybody and doesn't really have problems with any people. Those guys, they are naturals when it comes to CRM. However, sometimes you will come across someone that you don't have that chemistry with, someone that you don't, maybe you don't like him or her for whatever reason. It just doesn't click. And that's when CRM becomes, like, your CRM training really has to kick into force, because you have to, of course, be able to work with him or her, no matter if you like them or not. And this is easier for some people and it's harder for some people, but it's definitely one of the most important qualities that you will have as a pilot, because you might be Chuck Yeager, you might be able to get your aircraft in or out of any situation, but if you can't work together with your crew or together with your colleague, you will still not be a good pilot. Okay, it's that important. It just is. You have to be a people's person in order to be a successful commercial pilot these days. So I hope that answers your questions. If not, then please give me follow-up questions. Okay, so Martin Van Wouters has asked, what do you think about aviation enthusiasts who are passengers who are sitting in the jump seat during the flight? Now, when I grew up, I was an aviation enthusiast myself. From the age of 13, if you see my video about how I became a pilot, I decided to become a pilot when I was 13, and from that on, whenever I got into an aircraft, I tried to get into the cockpit to speak to the pilots before the flight, and if they were in a good mood, I could sit in during the flight, or at least during parts of the flight. I used to love that. I thought it was fantastic, and I still think that would be great. Like, it is fantastic. It's great for your understanding of the occupation as such. It's also great because you're learning things. You see things that you didn't think existed. However, after September 11th, this changed completely. Now, the safety and the security and the well-being of everyone on board is paramount to our job. And unfortunately, with the nature of what happened during September 11th, we are no longer allowed to take people into the flight deck during flight. Okay. That's several reasons for that. One of the obvious reason is that we just don't want to take the chance. We don't know the people who are not licensed, the people who doesn't have airline badges. We don't know who they are. They might be the greatest people in the world. It might be you guys that I know are just out there to learn. However, we just don't know. So we always take the safe side, which means that we don't allow anyone who's not a licensed pilot from the specific airline that you fly with, or a aviation authority inspector to sit in the flight deck, unless you have specific clearance from the chief pilot in whatever airline that you're going to fly with. And of course, I can't speak for every airline. I'm sure that there still are airlines in certain parts of the world or smaller airlines that do allow people to get into the flight deck. And if that's the case, then please, you can always ask. You don't lose anything by asking. But I would say that in 99% of the cases, when you're looking at big commercial airlines today, you will not be allowed to come in and sit in the cockpit. You will, in most places, be allowed to come in and visit before or after the flight if there's time to do so. You just go to the purser, the flight attendant, and ask it responsibility. They will ask the pilots, and the pilots will say yes or no depending on how much time they have available. And I am very happy to let people come in and talk and ask their questions. But during flight, unfortunately, no. And that's because of security, really. So Nico Flyer has asked a question here as well. So what's your opinion about the use of fixed training devices during training? I mean, during instrument rating, CPL, type rating, etc., even during an MCC course. How can a fixed FSTD improve your CRM skills during MCC? And congrats on your 2,000 subscribers. Thank you very much. Okay. If the question is fixed training devices, as in simulators that doesn't move, then I don't have anything against them. And in fact, I think that they're going to become more and more used during initial flight training, especially during MCC training, because the full flight simulators, the ones that I am instructing on, they are fantastic for handling training, and they're fantastic for type rating training as well. However, when it comes to the initial part of the type rating, as in when you have to learn procedures and technical aspects of the aircraft and so on, it doesn't matter if the aircraft is moving or not. In fact, it might actually be a distraction from what you're learning, because remember, the type rating is, it's supposed to increase your knowledge in steps. And in the beginning, what you need to learn is how to set up the flight deck safely, what the different buttons do, what the different systems look like, what happens when you switch one switch on and one switch off, what happens to the fuel flow, the pressurization system, things like that. And it doesn't matter if the simulator is moving or not when you do this. Same thing, I would say, goes for instrument rating. I mean, in the beginning in instrument rating, you just need to be able to fly your QD Mike, QD Romeo. You need to be able to sit in an NDB hold, in your VOR hold. You need to do entries. You need to shoot NDB and ILS approaches, things like that. It doesn't, in the beginning, really need any movement. You just need to be able to see what the arrows are doing and how you're supposed to do in certain situations. And then as the training goes along, then you need to add on motion, because it becomes another skill that you need to master, another difficulty that you need to work with. So in the beginning, I think fixed training devices are great. I think fixed training devices are going to come in even on recurrent training. That's my guess anyway. And of course, towards the end of your training, as you're getting into actually flying the things, you need to be able to fly them when the thing is moving around as well, which means that fixed training devices can never be used throughout the training. But in the beginning of a type rating, certainly during an MCC course, especially in the beginning of your IR rating, I think they're probably really, really good tools, provided that they're very, very, very professional, of course, very, very detailed in their system responses. Right, so Gil Hermeguiz have asked me, hey Captain, do you think that a JOC would be important before type rating? So that would be a jet orientation course. And would you change any procedures in CRM applied nowadays? All right, okay, so these jet orientation courses, as you might have seen in my previous videos that I put out, I am a big fan of keeping costs low. Okay. Now, jet orientation courses, in my experience, at least when I did my training, was a way from flight school to kind of squeeze some extra money out of the students. They didn't necessarily give you anything extra, especially if you've done a good MCC course. A jet orientation course doesn't really add much to your skill set, because the MCC course is supposed to be the gateway into flying heavy aircraft, propellers, jets, and so on. And the jet orientation course is just something that doesn't really give you anything on your papers except the fact that you've done it. So that's how it used to be. Now, I'm not going to say that all jet orientation courses are like this, because there is a big step between flying a propeller-driven small aircraft to flying a big, heavy twin-engine jet. There's no question about that. And if you do feel that you need a little bit of extra training, that you want to increase your CRM skills and so on, then a jet orientation course might well be something for you, especially if it's done by one of the major schools, one of the bigger operators that really know what they're doing. But I would tell you that make sure that you have talked to someone who has gone through this course and ask them if they thought it was worth the money before you start paying for it. That would be my advice. But sure, if it gives you something, and if you do get some good feedback back from it, then, and you have the money available, of course, then it might be a good idea. When it comes to changing something in CRM training, no, there's nothing I can say that I would change right now. CRM training is continuously evolving all the time. Anytime something happens, it is evaluated from all kinds of aspects, technical aspects, but also CRM aspects. So if something has happened, let's say an accident has happened, the crew has shut down the wrong engine for whatever reason, that will be then processed by the airline in question and by the aviation authorities who's doing whatever the investigation is, and then it's going to be fed back into the international community to feed that out to the CRM courses. So we continuously take in information from the business, and we evolve the CRM courses to include that, which means that there's no, you don't see the CRM courses changing in steps. It's just continuously kind of flowing and evolving. So I think that as long as that works well, as long as everyone keeps writing reports when something has happened, honest, unbiased reports, and the airlines use them in the way it's supposed to be used, as in they're using it de-identified to teach other people what went wrong. As long as that keeps happening, then I'm fairly happy with the way that things are evolving today. And I think, from my experience anyway, that it's working very well. And it's moving. The whole training sector is actually moving that way. That the companies are taking in more and more information from the line and readapting their recurrent training to suit what the reality looks like. And that will undoubtedly be the future of airline training, in my view. All right, so G. Danders, you just have to love these names on Instagram, has asked me, hi, great info, thank you. What's your opinion about doing a bachelor's degree before pilot training? And well done on 2,000 subscribers. Thank you once again. Yeah, when it comes to these questions, I'm getting a lot of questions about what if you want to do a degree before you start your airline training or not. So I actually did a podcast on this. My answer to that is that I think there's nothing wrong with doing a degree before, and you will definitely get something out of it. If it's going to help you to get an airline job, it's doubtable. And some airlines will actually require you to have a degree before you apply. So if you go in and you look at Jet2 or British Airways or Virgin Atlantic or American Airlines or Delta, whatever, if you go to their homepages and you click on their careers. Usually on all their homepages, they will have a career button. You can go in there. They will list what kind of requirements they have. And most of them will actually require you to have a degree. It might be a bachelor's degree, might be college degree or whatever, depending on the country you come from. So in some cases, you actually do have to have some kind of upper level education before you start getting into the airline business. In Europe, there are several airlines that does not need that you can go straight from your, from finishing school to starting your airline training or starting your flight training and then going straight into an airline. So there is possibility to do that as well. This is why I am reluctant to say you have to do this or you should do that. It's up to you. And also remember that a degree is something that you will be able to use your entire life. So if you, for some reason, the airline business doesn't work out for you, it doesn't, you work through it and you find out that it's not really for you, that is great to have that degree in the background so you can fall back on that, or maybe change your career path. So it's always good to have a degree behind you. I would never discourage anyone from doing that. Right, so Martin Wouters is asking, when do you use anti-ice? The question, or the answer to that is when there's icing conditions outside. To keep it simple, there's a whole manual covering this question, but we tend to use in the 737-800. We tend to use engine anti-ice. So we have two different de-icing systems. We have engine anti-ice and wing anti-ice, and they can be used at the same time. Engine anti-ice we tend to use when there's icing conditions outside, which means that there's visible moisture. So that can be rain, it can be cloud, it can be snow, sleet, any kind of visible moisture. And the temperature is below 10 degrees of total air temperature. That's plus 10 degrees total air temperature. When we have that, we put the engine anti-ice on. And then we keep that on during climb, until we reach an outside air temperature of minus 40 degrees static air temperature. So static air temperature, you will have to go into progress page 2 on your CDU to find what your static air temperature is, because the temperature that you will see on your display is only going to give the total air temperature. And that includes ram rise, for example. But when the temperature drops below 40 degrees, minus 40 degrees to static air temperature, then we turn it off, because then the likelihood of ice crystals is so small, or the likelihood of the ice crystals actually sticking to the engines are so small that it's negligible, and we turn it off, because it does use quite a lot of bleed air in order to heat the cowlings. When it comes to wing anti-ice, we use that when we see that we have ice on us. So we tend to see that in the windshield. It tends to build up this kind of butterfly pattern on the windshield, and also on the windshield wipers you'll be able to see that there's ice building up on top of them. When we see that, we turn the wing anti-ice on, and it's a thermal anti-ice switch, so it uses bleed air as well to heat part of the wing, and that takes away the ice. And then we keep it on if it's bad, or we switch it off when we see that the ice has disappeared. Good, more questions. Right, so I'm going to switch over to Twitter and see if there's anything that's coming there. No, not really. So once again, it looks like Instagram is the way to go. Let's see if there's anything on Facebook, maybe. Not really. All right, guys. So keep asking questions on Instagram then. If you haven't added me to your Instagram, just search for Mentor Pilot, and you'll be able to find me there. Just subscribe, and you'll be able to ask whatever questions that you might have. And by the way, guys, do you like this? Do you like these live feeds? Because I think they're quite good. They give a nice interactive way of answering your questions, and I really like that. So I'll be doing more of these if you think that they're worth it. All right, we have a new question from Vincent. Hi, Vincent. Welcome to the podcast. So what do you enjoy most about being a pilot? Well, That's a wide question. Now, I've talked about this in previous podcasts because it actually doesn't have just one answer. Generally, you become a pilot because you have a dream. You have a dream about what it's like to be a pilot. And I am here to try to answer your questions in order to make that dream as realistic as possible. Okay. As in, I will be telling you what my views are on this. That my views might be completely different than someone else's views, but at least you have someone that honestly wants to tell you what we think. So if I speak for myself, I wanted to become a pilot because I had a dream about what being a pilot was like. And in my dream, that involved flying all over the world. It involved flying with beautiful women to exotic places and earning loads and loads of money doing so, and have loads of time off. Okay, that was my dream. And as you can imagine, it was not a fantastically realistic dream. Okay, and but it kept me going. And I was asking people during my training, my picture of what a pilot was like, what being a pilot was like, changed. It, from more and more people you asked that was in the industry, you got more both positive and negative feedback about what life was like. And I started to see that the picture I had of the dream was slightly different. But in reality, if you ask me, there are very few jobs that can compare to this job. Okay, there are downsides to it. There are downsides, like I've talked about, like possibly family life, that you might have to move a lot. You might not have the employment security that you would have if you work within heavy industry, for example, stuff like that. But on the plus side, you have a lot of time off. You work, if you compare to a normal job, you will work way less. You will definitely see exotic places. You will fly these great aircraft, and nothing can take that away. That part of the dream hasn't changed from when I wanted to become a pilot to when I now am a pilot since 13 years back. It is great fun to fly. Every day is different. Every day has its challenges. Every day has its pluses and minuses. But when you press those toga buttons and the aircraft starts spooling up and you start to feel that power pushing you down the runway, taking off into whatever nice sunrise it might be, it's very hard to beat that behind any desk in the world. Okay, so I enjoy the people I work with. I enjoy my roster, which is fantastic at the moment. I enjoy my salary, which is also very good if you compare to any comparable job. It is not rock star money. It will not be rock star money, but it is very good money for the general work we're doing. Could it be better? Yes, certain parts of the work of the terms and conditions could definitely be better. But all in all, the package is great. So I love my job, and which is why I'm doing this, really, guys. I'm doing this for you guys because I would have wanted someone to tell me how it was like after 13 years when I was doing the training. So I hope you guys are enjoying it, because that's why I'm here. All right, so another question from G. Dandrasai, and that comes from YouTube. Unfortunately, I can't see YouTube while I'm actually doing this. Even if I open up a different window, it doesn't work. So, but the question is, do you know about USA education requirements? And the answer to that is not really. I haven't flown in the States myself. As I said, go into the major airlines in there and ask them, or see on their homepages what kind of requirements they have. And also, if I would be you and I would be really interested in this, I would probably contact one of the flight FTOs, flight training organizations over there, and ask them directly exactly what you need before you start your training. Okay, so that you have that, from someone who is in the training business in the States. They will be able to tell you exactly what you need and use that. Because that's, I can guess, but it's much better when it comes to serious questions like that. It's much better to contact the flight training organization directly. It's the same as all these questions I'm getting about medical requirements. I'm not a doctor, so medical requirements is much better if you just contact an aviation doctor and ask about what kind of corrections you can have in your eyes, for example, or if you can fly if you're colorblind, things like that. So Ben asked if I was wondering if your company has an SMS program and how do you guys implement it if you have one? Yes, my company, which I'm still not want to talk about specifically, does have an SMS program. The safety management system program is very advanced. It includes what I've been talking about before. It takes in all the different parameters that we have from our flying crews online, which is report writing, which is the OFDM system. That's a flight data monitoring system that monitors all the flights we do every single day and finds specific trends. They take that together with all of the in-flight reports and all of the confidential reports and everything. It feeds it into the SMS system. The SMS system then churns out recommendations to the rest of the organizations, which tends to be the training department, the flight ops department, and so on what to do. So if they, for example, have a lot of reports about an approach into a specific airport, and that's backed up by the OFDM showing an unusually high level of high energy approaches, for example, then it's likely that the company will, when they analyze these figures, contact the airport in question and ask them to change that specific procedure because it just doesn't work. The same comes if we see a huge increase in people taking out the gear too late or coming in with high energy approaches all over the line, then it might be a question for the flight training department to implement in our recurrent training that we need to start getting people to get drag out earlier on the approaches so that we don't get into these high energy approaches. And I'm just taking examples here now, but that's how it's fed. It's using all of the input lines, churning them in through the SMS system, and then putting them out to the department that can do something about it. All airlines have this now. It's a hugely important system. Okay, I hope that answers your question. If not, ask me a follow-up question on it. Martin Wouters is asking, what do you think about working as an air traffic controller and compare it to job as a pilot? I have friends working as air traffic controllers actually, and they love it. It's a completely different type of job. So it's very hard to compare. Air traffic controllers will be ground-based, obviously. So a lot of these things that are taken up as negatives as pilot will not be there if you're an air traffic controller. As in, you generally won't have to move far away from where you live. The employment security tends to be better. The salary is still good and stuff, but you also don't fly aircraft, so it is a completely different job. It is still involving aviation, and they have huge requirements. You need to go through loads and loads of tests in order to be accepted into an air traffic controller school, because your ability to cope with stress has to be very high. But I think that an ATC controller is a fantastic job. Everyone that I've been speaking to is doing it, are very, very happy with it. So I wouldn't do it myself, but I highly recommend anyone who's interested in doing it, so please try it out. Dead Stock Dealing has asked me, have you got any recommendations on flight schools in the UK, Oxford Aviation or CTC Wings, for example? Those two are, I would say, two top schools. Once again, I have very little experience with flight training organizations in different parts of the world because I am not in contact with them, but we do get cadets from these specific schools, and they tend to be very happy. They seem to be very professional flight schools. So Oxford Aviation and CTC, both of them are so large at this point that you wouldn't see any big deviations from any of them. It's not like you're going to get a batch that are really unhappy with it. It's going to be, they will be very, very good. Generally, they will also be very expensive. So, if you want high quality training from a large training organization, you will have to pay for it. If you're willing to bet a little bit and go out and look a little bit wider outside in Europe, there are still other flight training organizations out there that might charge you half as much. but it will require you to be much more careful as well, because they might not be as good. So by all means, these two schools, they're foolproof. If you go there to do their tests and you get accepted into the flight schools and you have the money to pay, then I think it's probably a safe bet to do so. That stock dealing has also asked, what other goals do you still wish to achieve in the future? Yeah, it's actually quite funny, because when you start this, when you work towards becoming a pilot, that's all you see. That's the goal. Okay, you're pointing at that. I'm going to do that, and you work towards that goal. And as I've been saying in my podcast, it's extremely important to have a good goal to work against, because you need that in order to know which pathways to choose, and you also need something to motivate you to go through and do these things in school that you might not really like, but you need to have a good grade anyway, and it will motivate you to do that. So having that one goal is extremely efficient when you go through your school and your training and so on. But then, of course, the downside to that is that once you have achieved that goal, then it becomes a little bit emptier. Okay, it's all of a sudden you've been working your ass off to reach that goal. I'm going to get an airline pilot. That's what I'm going to do. But once you're there, then of course in the beginning you will have other goals. Like first, once you have your licenses, you want to get your job. Okay, once you have your first airline job, you want to get through your typewriting training, then your line training. Okay. And then you want to be a good first officer, so you want to work hard on becoming that. And then once you're a good first officer, you want to become captain. And once you're a captain, that's generally where things kind of slows down a little bit. But if you're like me, that you want to achieve more and more all the time, then you want to maybe become a training captain at some point. So you work up against that, and then you might become a simulator instructor. And then once you become a simulator instructor, you might want to become a typewriting examiner. Okay. But once you have achieved that, once you are a senior line training captain at TRE, then, as a pilot, it's hard to get, to see more goals up in that line. Then you might be looking at the different airlines, and you have to go through the same kind of steps in every airline that you go through. Or you might be looking at other pathways. Maybe you want to go into airline management in some sort, or slow down and focus more on training, or start a YouTube channel, or something like that. But in my view, it's very, very important to still keep goals ahead of you, because otherwise you tend to lose a little bit of focus. And it's hard to keep yourself sharp if you don't have something that you're working against. I mean, that goal might well be to be a really, really good pilot, just a good captain or a good first officer, and that might be great. It's depending on how you are as a person. You might also want to step away from those professional goals and maybe focus on family issues instead. That's depending on where you are in life, what you want to achieve, and what you want to prioritize. Okay, but for me, for right now, I want to be good at what I'm doing. I'm still fairly new in my current job. I want to make sure that I'm doing that to my best possible way, basically. So that's my goal at the moment. I want to be a really good, pilot in the capacity that I have at the moment. And then after that, I am going to focus more on my family. Family issues and my children, they're the most important things. I am really happy where I am professionally and where I am geographically and everything. So from that point of view, I'm not really interested in moving unless there's something coming along that might change all of that, of course. I mean, you never know. That's the thing. You have to be flexible in this line of work. All right, so that's stock dealing. You're on fire today. You're asking loads of questions, which is great. What's your views on airline placement MPL course over a traditional ATPL course? I've actually done a podcast on that fairly recently. I do think that MPL is the way forward. It will be, it's different you know, the normal, standard ab initio training up to ATPL theory includes much more flying. And people who doesn't like the MPL training, they always point at the fact that it's less flying, less actual flying in MPLs. However, if you look at what you're actually trying to achieve, the ab initio training has not changed for maybe 30 years. It's exactly the same. You go through the same steps, okay? But the airline business has changed a lot. And what we are actually trying to achieve is to get people in, good cadets that are trained specifically for what they have to do, which is work for an airline. And that is using the MCC concepts, you know, the multi-crew environment. The SOPs are becoming more and more important. So I think that to do your training with through an MPL scheme towards a specific airline and then actually get a job in that airline is probably the most efficient way of achieving that. So I think in the future I would be expecting to see more and more MPL schemes popping up. But that's my view anyway. I do think that the ab initio training is good as well. It will give you a much broader picture of what the airline world actually looks like and what all types of aviation looks like. But if you are in here with the sole goal of becoming an airline pilot for a specific airline, then MPL is much more efficient, in my view anyway. Right, so those are questions coming in. Great, guys. So Ji Dan Der Say is helping you out by checking on questions on YouTube. Thank you very much for that. So some more questions from YouTube. Have you had any critical situations? And the answer to that is, of course, you know, that's part of the work. It's part of the job. I'm not going to go into what they are. I haven't had any major technical emergencies because the aircrafts are just that good at the moment. You have smaller ones, but you have redundant systems generally, so you tend to be able to work them out. Things will happen in this job. That's why you have to train as much as you do. So yes, I've had critical situations happening. However, nothing that would have endangered anyone except maybe someone who's been sick, for example. Like medical emergencies would be the most common one. The day of how is the day of an airline pilot video going? It's not going very well, and the reason for that is because we are not allowed to film in the flight deck. My airline has been very clear on that. So the way that I'm going to have to do that is different. I might have to use a simulator, and I might have to do video clips before or after and during the day, but not while we're actually flying, which is a pity. But as you know, you guys are out on YouTube all the time, you know that there's hundreds of these. I know KLM is doing loads of them because they do, for some curious reason, agree on filming on the flight deck. But, you know, if it were up to me, I will do it. However, it is very hard to do in a professional way, to be honest. So I will try to do it. I don't know really exactly how, but at the moment it's kind of on hold until I have figured out how that can be done. So Antpara92 is asking, do you have any advice for low-hour CPL holders struggling to find their first job? Yeah, well, this is the key question. We've all been in this situation, and I have made videos on this subject as well. I would say think a little bit outside of the box, maybe. I mean, you obviously have to go through the normal steps of applying for every single airline job that is out there with your hours. You have to be able to be flexible when it comes to which part of the world you might want to live in. But also think a little bit outside. Maybe, you know, maybe you have someone that you know that has contacts in a major organization. Let's say you have someone working for, I don't know, Ericsson or a big company, and they tend to have jets. Maybe you know someone in there. Maybe he knows someone that can get you into a first officer position flying commercial jets for private jets, basically. Things like maybe you have a rich uncle, maybe you have something like that. So by all means, do apply. Try to build your hours as you go. Look at cadet schemes. A lot of airlines do have cadet schemes, but don't underestimate the contacts that you might have that you don't think about. Okay, and definitely whatever contacts that you have in the business, use them. Ask them continuously. Do you know anything? Are there any jobs out there? Have you heard anything? So scour all the contacts that you might have. But apart from that, I mean, the sad truth is that you're just gonna have to keep working. It is a kind of catch-22 where you can't get a job, so you don't get any hours. And the reason that you can't get any job is because you don't have any hours. So it is hard, but we've all been there. So just keep at it, work at it all the time. And maybe you'll have to move down to a different country somewhere and work. It is possible. Make sure that you're not connected to the point where you live, because I would say that that's probably the most important thing, to be able to be geographically flexible. So the stock dealing is asked again. Some airlines MPL courses offer a flexi crew contract once you graduate. What are your views on this? I don't really know what flexi crew contract is. It sounds dodgy. Please let me know what that entails, and I'll tell you what I think about it. So JK00 has asked, have you seen the Aer Lingus fully sponsored cadet program, and what's your view on it? Well, if it's a fully sponsored program, my view on it is great. So if you can manage to get into that, it's fantastic. Go for it. Any fully sponsored cadet scheme that you can get your hands on is good. Okay, go for it. That's my view on that. We have a dog. If you can hear it, it's our German Shepherd that's listening to people out on the street. All right, so Mabau 17, because the pilot job situation in Europe is quite bad right now, do you think it's still worth to aim for a pilot career in Europe? And he's also adding on that it's 16 years old. Like I said, it's bad depending on how you see it. It's much better now than it was when I started 13 years ago. The airline business will always go in kind of curves like this. So it will go up and it will go down, up and down, depending on what the general economy is doing. It's very hard. You might, if you see that the business is on the top when you start your training, you might well hit the bottom as you're getting out of your training and so on. It's very hard to time these things. I would say work with your heart. If you really want to do this and you have the money to do so, and it's not going to strike you down, then try it. Be prepared that you might have to move outside of Europe to work, at least for a time. But there are several airlines that are hiring a lot of pilots at the moment. So I wouldn't say that the airline business in Europe is particularly bad. It's been way worse than it is right now. So some more YouTube questions then from Ben. Is there a process an American pilot has to go through in order to fly for a European airline? Yeah, it tends to be, you tend to have to convert your licenses from your FAA license to a JAA license. There is a specific procedure for doing that. I think it used to involve writing all the ATPL exams. However, that might have changed. It was quite a while since I looked into this before. But yeah, in most cases, you do have to convert your licenses from FAA to GAA. The same as if you go to China, you're going to have to get Chinese aviation licenses as well. It's a pain, but it has to be done. Another question from KK Cat. What inspired and made you driven to train and become a pilot? This one I have actually covered in how I became an airline pilot, and it was I was 13 years old and I was getting a a present from my mom and dad for my 14th birthday to get a flight lesson in a Cessna, because I was already interested in, because my father had taken a license before me. And I went out and I had this fabulous, fantastic, great flight, perfectly calm air, beautiful blue skies, and I got to fly the aircraft myself, and the instructor even let me land the aircraft, and that was it. Once I'd done that, I was completely bitten, and there was nothing really I could do to do anything else than become a pilot after that point. Absolutely fantastic experience. Most of you guys will probably have something similar out there. It's something that gets you, once you are bitten, it's very hard to get that away. All right, a very interesting question from Dean Walsh on YouTube, actually. A quick question regarding CRM. I know everything should be standard in the flight deck, but does having a third pilot in the cockpit affect anything? Weather position when doing a line check? And the answer to that is yes. Yes, it does. We do have empiric evidence that a third pilot in the cockpit is a distraction, a quite severe distraction, actually. And you know, it's kind of natural, actually. If you have someone else in there who doesn't have an active role, the other two pilots are likely to want to include the third pilot in the conversation in some sort. So generally, this is not a problem during the takeoff and climb. But as you get into cruise, you'll see how pilots start kind of looking behind them and say, oh, well, how are things at the base and so on. Start asking, and all three becomes engrossed in conversation, and they start missing radio calls and things like that. So having a third pilot in the cockpit is a distraction. Generally, we advise our pilots not to sit in the cockpit unless they have a reason to be there. So unless they're doing a line check or they're doing training or something like that, they're supposed to. If they're jump seating, as in positioning, then they're supposed to sit in the cabin if there are any free seats to do so, because it does affect CRM. Right, guys, we are going towards the end of this hour. Do you have any final questions for me now before we wrap it up? And also, please go in and give me feedback on this. If you think that my answers were good, or if you think you want more answers in this line, if you want me to do this more often, then let me know, and I'll do that. This, of course, was in celebration of having more than 2,000 subscribers. I'm now aiming towards 3,000 subscribers. So do your best to share my videos on whatever media that you can think of, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. It really helps. And also give me suggestions on how to improve the channel. It might be that you want me to change to a cooler intro or involve more pictures or things like that. Just let me know, and I'll try to do that. Okay. Question, the last one then, will be from Dead Stock Dealing. Do you believe that aptitude testing software and internets are useful? And yes, I do. I think that they are great as a preparation for your actual aptitude tests when you come for the airline. They will give you a feeling of what you can expect, more or less. They will also give you familiarity with how the tests are done, and as soon as you feel that you are familiar with something, you always feel more relaxed. So even if they're not exactly the same, you will recognize the format. So I do think that going out and doing aptitude tests on the internet is very good. Okay, I highly recommend that for everyone. So that will be the last question of today. I thank everyone who has been watching. I hope it's been useful. And I will be going, I'm still on vacation, so I'm still slowing this down a little bit, but keep those questions coming, keep the suggestions coming about future content, and have a fantastic week. Over and out. Good night.